Hi, I'm David Nixon. I'm the Artistic Director of Northern Ballet, as well as the choreographer for Hamlet. My top tip for watching this version of Hamlet is to look for a different lighting sequence when Hamlet is in thought, and that therefore means that it isn't something that's actually happening, but it's either something that is a memory or something that he is recalling, or it's in his imagination. I've always been quite taken with the story of Hamlet, and so when we were looking at which Shakespearean plays we might turn into dance works, it sort of came out on the top for me, and also Patricia Doyle, who co-directed it with me, felt strongly about it as well. I think with Hamlet we felt, where we had done this very fun and clever adaptation with Midsummer Night's Dream, that we would be able to do some sort of interesting concept with Hamlet that perhaps you couldn't do with some of the other plays as easily. You start the process by doing an incredible amount of research, and that doesn't mean just reading the play. What that means is reading the play and then seeing or watching as many versions of the play that are available, and also reading the research around the play. So what other people have said about the play, what was important to them, so that you slowly but surely are gathering this kind of storyboard, for lack of any better expression, of strong running themes. Because ultimately what you're going to do in dance is you're not going to capture the word for word. You're going to capture the themes of the piece, and you're looking for those themes that can be most powerful in dance. When I work with Patricia, a lot of her work, a big chunk of her work, is the upfront research and the discussion of the direction that we're taking. She plays a key role in that, and often if I have some thoughts that I can't seem to articulate, she has ways of pulling that out of me, and so we actually get that down onto paper and into process. Then what she does when we come into the actual creative process in the studio is she ensures that the dancers, if it's a play, for instance, like Hamlet, that they really know who their characters are, and she'll take them aside and she will read to them, she'll have them read the characters, talk about the relationships within the play, and then transpose that into our version. So how does that relate? How is that the same, or how does it slightly differ? And then when we're in the actual studio, she will be looking at the work I'm making and seeing if it makes sense to her about what we're trying to do. And then sometimes if I'm stuck, she actually will propose some ideas or propose some ways in to getting some ideas. Key to the development of the story would be the setting, because the setting has to somehow incorporate naturally the themes that you need, but the setting itself will change them. And that sort of translation and evolution is what will make your piece and strengthen it in the areas that you wish or not. One deciding factor was we didn't want to do an ancient ballet, so we didn't want it in a medieval castle, and we also then that pushed us out of doing something that would be maybe in the 1800s. And so we wanted to do something that was relatively contemporary, but not present day. So we started thinking about the 1900s and what was a good period there, and really associated the kind of regime that Claudius was running, and actually the character of Claudius was quite fascist in nature. And so originally we were sitting in Italy, actually, during Mussolini's time, and then finally thought that we weren't really finding the connective tissue that we needed. And so moved to Paris during the Second World War and the occupation because of the collaboration situation. And that was key in Hamlet's play, is that Hamlet feels his mother and Ophelia and Laertes and Polonius, everybody is collaborating with the enemy. And so 1940s occupied Paris, to survive basically, people became collaborators. What was very strong for Patricia in it is the Hamlet character himself, that he is actually, we sort of struggled a bit between us because she really saw him as this boy that everyone loves in a way. But out of that was kind of the concept of mothers and sons. That was a very strong concept, and the fact that many people think that Gertrude's doing things that are really terrible, but in actual fact, if you look at it, Gertrude is trying to save her son. She's, yes, she's receiving some sort of position, and I think there was some sort of attraction to Claudius, but it's still at the back of her head is how to ensure that her son is safe and how he, in essence, gains the family position. The other thing for me is that it was about Elsinore, the castle, home. Home being this place of love and the happy unit of the family, which Hamlet knows. And then he goes away, and when he comes back, it's totally not that anymore. And really at the core of what, yes, there's this whole thing about Hamlet's indecisive nature, but what for me is would never have placed the boy in the situation if his home hadn't changed so much. And it's that whole concept of, it goes beyond just anybody coming home and how things change. Well, there are some omissions in the ballet. There's no Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. There isn't the mousetrap. There's a version of it, but not in the way, it's not done as a play. It's done by Hamlet himself, acting it out. The ghost is different. The ghost is in Hamlet's mind, whereas in the play there's that Elizabethan thing about superstition and about real ghosts. And I didn't feel that was up to date for us. So it's more that Hamlet's remembering his father, and his father he's trying to put together what's happened to his father. So the father plays as a sense of energy around him, or also as something as he's picturing in his mind. So I think those things are, you see, they're different, but they're just evolutions of the themes. Somebody once said about the fact that it's set in Nazi Paris that, well, of course, that how could he possibly have done anything, and that weakens the story. Well, actually somebody else said to me, who actually works in theatre, said, how clever, because never have I seen the importance of Elsinore and the change of it, which is actually at the root of this whole story. This boy's home is not only does he have a new father and his father's gone, but the enemy, the actual enemy that he went off to fight is living in his home, in his city. And I don't think for a young person that's incredibly powerful. Movements that represent characters are quite dependent on the kind of story that you're doing. In Hamlet, it wasn't as much trying to find vocabulary for the characters. It was finding vocabulary that tells the story. So one of the first things that I did was the duet when Hamlet comes back from the war, and he's seen Ophelia in his home at a party, fraternizing with the Germans, and then he's gone to his room totally dismayed at what situation he's arrived home in, and his best friend Horatio comes in and then brings Ophelia in. And there's this whole sort of, how do you get across, first of all, that he doesn't want to speak to her even, but then slowly during this pas de deux, it's two people recalling a relationship. And when you first meet somebody, how you get out this idea that, we came up with this, you have so much inside to say that it's left hanging out there because you can't quite make the decision as to what you will say and what does the other person want to hear. And then we talked about the picture being the same. So we came up with the picture frame of the person's face. So you're looking, do you still fit in the frame that I remember? The framework is evolved in the duet. So and eventually Hamlet takes it on and he remembers the picture, yes, as well as she does, and they're united again. And later on when Ophelia has gone crazy, she keeps using the framework around the Germans and it doesn't fit, the frame doesn't fit, she can't find the fit to the frame. So language like that is used. There's things like when we were joking the other day, poor Ophelia is told to shut up about 3 times in the ballet, and so there's always this movement of men literally putting their hands to her mouth, like, you have nothing to say. The music came after the decision, after the scenario, because you can't really write the music without a scenario. But Philip Feeney is kind of a little genius in his own right, because we didn't really, I spent a bit of time with Philip, but he just seemed to innately know what to do with the music. And so we hardly changed anything from what he wrote. A few bars here or there were shortened maybe, but he just grasped and had his style of writing it from the beginning. And it's interesting, I didn't struggle at all to create it, and yet now in restaging it, I am sometimes looking at it musically going, how do we use that music there? And once we get it back in the steps, as soon as we do that, I understand it, but the music truly supports the drama of the piece. There is an indecisiveness in our Hamlet, an inability to actually maybe react sometimes, but I think that's overemphasized sometimes in the play. It just goes on, and sometimes you want to just say, Hamlet, will you do something? And this is a more real Hamlet. It's a real character, I think. And so some of those shifts, if you're actually wanting to see Hamlet the play as it was maybe performed by a Shakespearean club during Shakespeare's time, this is very different. But does it retain what's at the heart of what Shakespeare was talking about? I think very much so.